Hey, what's up? What's going on? Welcome back. Welcome back, everybody, right? Friends, family, Mishpachah, Akim and Akatim, brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, aunties and uncles, grandmas and grandpas, everybody in the house. Shalom, shalom, and welcome back to the road trip. It's good to have you here. Of course, always it is. You know, we're always blessed when we're able to fellowship with one another, catch up, right? These are exciting times that we're living in. Welcome back to the road trip, Kingdom Builders, okay? So, before we even get started, we're going to dip up, right? All praises to the Most High, Abba Yahweh, right? Abba, not Yahweh, right? All praises to Yahweh. Glory to our King, beloved King and brother, first fruit, Yahweh Shai. That's right. Honors to the Ruach, wisdom. My love and my respect goes out to each and every single one of you, Kingdom Builders and road trippers, right? Shalom. Peace and blessings to your homes, your dwelling places, where you stay at, right? Right. Your children, your loved ones, your friends, and of course those pets, those little fur babies, right? The little fur babies. We love them all. That's family. So, with all of our pleasantries out the way, you know what? It's kind of interesting how we never lit the candle. What is wrong with me? Right? Let me get this lit. Hold up. How y'all been doing? Right? End of the work week. Beginning of Shabbat. And we get to be with each other once again, and read scripture, and edify each other, and love on one another. That's what we're called to do, and shout aloud to the Most High. All praise to the Most High. Isn't that right? That's right. It's correct. That is absolutely correct. So what are we doing? We're back here in the works of Flavius Josephus, the Jewish Antiquities, or the air quotes. You see me doing those air quotes, right? The Antiquities of the Yahudim, all right? Our people, our Antiquities, right? And Flavius Josephus, and I'm just going to say this real quick, just to give some context, right? Flavius Josephus is a first-person account in the time of 70 AD, the fall of Jerusalem and the destruction of the temple, right? So, but he is still giving, secondary reference, or secondary resource, right, from the same scriptures and scrolls that have been less stepped on. But they've all been stepped on. And there's nothing that we ever read that hasn't been stepped on. But the level of how much mud is on it is important. So that's why we're reading these scrolls right here, and we're reading very similar stories and very similar tributes and things that took place. However, there is a level of detail that was not available in the normal, just off-the-shelf KJV. You know what I mean? So that's why I think that this is great, because it adds. It keeps adding. Or how do the younger people say it? It's giving, right? It just keeps giving. It's given, right? All right. So, and that's what this is. So, with no further ado, we're actually back in the book number 3. This is going to be chapter number 2 that we're reading. How the Amalekites and the neighboring nations made war with the Hebrews and were beaten and lost a great party of their army, a great part of their army. Right. So we're going to read chapter 2. And because chapter 3 is so short, we're just going to kind of roll right on over into that one. And it's only one section. There is one note. Now, there's one point of a note for chapter 2. And we'll go ahead and, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But on chapter 3 basically that states that Moshe kindly received his father-in-law Jethro when he came to him to Mount Sinai. And that's chapter 3. There are no notes for that, only one section. And then we'll go ahead and close that up there and get ready to kick off our Shabbat and try to get some edifying videos for us to watch, for me to watch. I got to grow, right? I got to grow. So there's a lot of people out there with some really great content, and I encourage each and every single one of y'all to check them out. And I'll put some of the links, I guess, in the description. I'm still not a YouTube kind of person. I don't really know how to do a lot on here, but I'll try to add links and stuff like that. Okay? And I also want to see if I can get a PDF that I can put online if you want to follow along with me while I'm reading. That would be good. All right. Well, no further ado. I guess that's enough on that intro. We're going to go ahead and jump into chapter 2, how the Amalekites and the neighboring nations made war with the Hebrews and were beaten and lost a great part of their army. All right, we're going to read that, and let's begin. All right, no further ado. Ladies and gentlemen, let's begin. Chapter 2, Section 1, and it reads, "The name of the Hebrews began already to be everywhere renowned, and rumors about them ran abroad. This made the inhabitants of those countries to be in no small fear. Accordingly, they sent ambassadors to one another, and exhorted one another to defend themselves, and to try to destroy these men. Those that induced the rest to do so were such as inhabited Gobolitis and Petra." These are cities. All right, fortified cities. "They were called Amalekites, and were the most warlike of the nations that lived around there." Right? And you're going to know some Amalekites today. As we keep reading, listen. As we're reading this about the Amalekites, try to picture what group of people today reminds you of these people. All right, we're going to go back a sentence, and we're going to start from here. So just think about this while we're reading. What group of people sounds like this? "They were called Amalekites, and were the most warlike of the nations that lived around there, and whose kings exhorted one another and their neighbors to go on to this war against the Hebrews, telling them that an army of strangers, and such a one as had run away from slavery under the Egyptians, lay in wait to ruin them, which army they were not, and common sense in regard to their own safety to overlook, but to crush them before they gather strength, and come to be in prosperity, and perhaps attack them first in a hostile manner, as presuming upon our inaction, and not attacking them before, and that we ought to avenge ourselves of them for what they have done in the wilderness." Right? They attacked us when we left out of Mizraim. They were the first ones to attack us from the flanks, getting our weak, getting our women, getting our elderly, anyone that might have had a handicap, slaughtered them. Because all the army was in the front, right? So they were catching the stragglers, all right? What they have done in the wilderness. Let's continue. "But that this cannot be so well done when they have once laid their hands on our cities and our goods, that those who try to crush a power in its first rise are wiser than those that try to put a stop to its progress when it has become formidable. For these last seem to be angry only at the flourishing of others, but the former do not leave any room for their enemies to become troublesome to them. After they had sent such embassies to the neighboring nations and among one another, they resolved to attack the Hebrews in battle." That's the end of section 1. Chapter 2. All right, let's continue. Section 2 reads, These proceedings of the people of those countries occasioned perplexity and trouble to Moshe, who expected no such warlike preparations. And when these nations were ready to fight, and the multitude of the Hebrews were obliged to try the fortune of war, they were in a mighty disorder, and in want of all necessities, and yet were to make war with men who were thoroughly prepared for it. Then, therefore, it was that Moshe began to encourage them and to exhort them to have a good heart. Remember, Moshe used to lead battles, right? Before all this, he was a warrior general, pretty much, okay? For the Pharaoh, right? And rely on the Most High Yahweh's assistance, by which they had been in a state of freedom, and to hope for victory over those who were ready to fight with them, in order to deprive them of that blessing, that they were supposed their own army to be numerous, wanting nothing, neither weapons, nor money, nor provisions, nor such other conveniences as, when men are in possession of, they fight without fear, and that they are to judge themselves to have all these advantages in the divine assistance. They are also to suppose the enemy's army to be small, unarmed, weak, and such as want those conveniences which they know must be wanted, when it is the Most High's will that they shall be beaten. And how valuable the Most High Yahweh's assistance is, they had experienced in abundance of trials, and those such as were more terrible than war, for that is only against men, but these were against famine and thirst, things indeed that are in their own nature insuperable, as also against mountains, and that sea which afforded them no way for escaping. Yet had all these difficulties been conquered by the Most High's gracious kindness to them. So he exhorted them to be courageous at this time, and to look upon their entire prosperity, to depend on the present conquest of their enemies. All right, so he's gathering the troops together now. All right, that's the end of section 2, by the way. All right, we're just warming up a little bit, trying to, salake for a little bit of the hiccups, man. We're good. All right, chapter 3, not chapter 3, section 3. All right, let's continue. All right, section 3, Mishpachah, and it reads, And with these words did Moshe encourage the multitude, who then called together the princes of their tribes, and their chief men, but separately and jointly. The young men he charged to obey their elders, and the elders to hearken to their leader. So the people were elevated in their minds, and ready to try their fortune in battle, and hoped to be thereby at length delivered from all their miseries. In fact, they desired that Moshe would immediately lead them against their enemies without the least delay, that no hesitation might be a hindrance to their present resolution. So Moshe sorted all that were fit for war into different troops, and sent Joshua, the son of Nun, to the tribe of Ephraim over them. One that was of great courage, and patient to undergo labors, of great abilities to understand and to speak what was proper, and very serious in the worship of the Most High Yahweh, and indeed made like another Moshe, a teacher of piety towards the Most High. He also appointed a small party of the armed men to be near the water, and to take care of the children, and the women, and of the entire camp. So that whole night they prepared themselves for the battle. They took their weapons, if any of them had such as were well made, and attended to their commanders as ready to rush forth to the battle as soon as Moshe should give the word of command. See, they were ready to go. Moshe also kept awake. He didn't go to sleep, teaching Joshua after what manner he should order his camp. But when the day began, Moshe called for Joshua again, and exhorted him to prove himself in deeds, as his reputation made men expect from him, and to gain glory by the present expedition, in the opinion of those under him. For his exploits in this battle, he also gave a particular exhortation to the principal men of the Hebrews, and encouraged the whole army as it stood armed before him. And when he had thus excited the army, both by his words and works, and prepared everything, he retired to a mountain, and committed the army to Yahweh and Joshua. All right, he went up there in prayer and fasting, in supplication for his nation. And that rhymes, and I like that. Supplication for the nation. All right, all praises to the Most High. That's the end of section 3. Let's hit section 4. Let's continue. Section 4. So the armies joined battle, and it came to a close fight. hand to hand, both sides showing great eagerness and encouraging one another. And indeed, while Moshe stretched out his hand toward heaven, the Hebrews were too hard for the Amalekites, but Moshe was not able to keep his hands thus stretched out. For as soon as he was let down his hand, so often were his own people defeated. He directed his brother Aharon and Hur, their sister Miriam's husband, right, to stand on each side of him and to take hold of his hands and not permit his weariness to lower his hands, but to assist him in keeping them extended. When this was done, the Hebrews conquered the Amalekites by main force, and indeed, they would all have perished, unless the approach of the night had obliged the Hebrews to stop killing anymore. So, our forefathers obtained a most signal and most seasonable victory. For they not only overcame those that fought against them, but terrified also the neighboring nations, and got great and splendid advantages, which they obtained of their enemies by their hard pains in this battle. For when they had taken the enemy's camp, they got ready booty for the public and for their own private families. Right? So they took in a bunch for the community, and then they took some for themselves. Whereas until they had not any sort of plenty of even necessity food. Remember? Of necessary food. They were hungry. So they weren't just fighting for the win and for the nation. They were fighting to get that plunder, right? All right. They wanted to spoil them. All right. The before mentioned battle, when they had once won it, was also the occasion of their prosperity, not only for the present, but for the future ages also. For they not only made slaves of the bodies of their enemies, but subdued their minds also. And after this battle became terrible to all that dwelt around them. Moreover, they acquired a vast quantity of riches. A vast quantity of riches, for a great deal of silver and gold was left in the enemy's camp, as brazen vessels which they made common use of in their families, cloth that was embroidered in the other sort, that is, what were weaved, and what were the ornaments of their armor, and other things that served for use in the family, and for the furniture of their rooms. They got also the spoils of their cattle and whatever uses to follow camps, when they removed from one place to another. So they took wagons and carts and all that kind of stuff like that, all right? So the Hebrews now valued themselves upon their courage and claimed their merit for their valor. And they perpetually prepared themselves to take pains by which they deemed every difficulty might be surmounted. Such were the consequences of this battle. So they grew in trusting in the Most High. That's the end of section 4. So they trust in the Most High now. So anytime there's ready for some war, they're getting dressed knowing that they're going to win. That makes it a lot easier to go to war, right? It's just some light work at that time. Let's get section 5, and then we're going to read the notes for this, and then we're going to read that short little chapter 3. Okay? Cool. All right. All right, section 5. On the next day, Moshe stripped the dead bodies of their enemies, and gathered together the armor of those that were fled, and gave rewards to such as had distinguished themselves in the action, and highly commended Joshua, their general, who was attested by all the army, on account of the great actions he had done. Nor was anyone of the Hebrews killed. Woo! But the killed of the enemy's armies were too many to be numbered. They were getting slaughtered. So Moshe offered sacrifices of thanksgiving to the Most High Yahweh, and built an altar, which he named the Most High, or the Adonai, the Conqueror. The Adon, the Conqueror. It says Lord, but you know. He also foretold that the Amalekites should utterly be destroyed, and that hereafter none of them should remain, because they fought against the Hebrews, and this when they were in the wilderness and in the distress also. Moreover, he refreshed the army with feasting, and thus did they fight this first battle with those that ventured to oppose them, after they were gone out of Mizraim. But when Moshe had celebrated this festival for the victory, he permitted the Hebrews to rest for a few days, and then he brought them out after the fight in order of battle. For they had now many soldiers in light armor, and going gradually on, he came to Mount Sinai in 3 months' time, after they were removed out of Mizraim, at which mountain, as we have before related, the vision of the bush and the other wonderful appearances had happened. Okay, that's the end of section 5. Let's read these notes. All right. There's only one. There's only one note. All right. Let's read it. All right. Chapter 2 note. Singular, right? And it reads, this imminent circumstance that while Moshe's hands were lifted up towards heaven, the Israelites, or the Yahudim, prevailed, and while they were let down towards the earth, the Amalekites prevailed, seems to me the earliest intimation we have of the proper posture used of old in solemn prayer, which was the stretching out of the hands and eyes toward heaven, as their passage of Old and New Testament inform us, right? So when they tell you to close your eyes, bow your head, and fold your hands, you're literally doing everything to close up yourself from the Most High. You need to have your head faced up to the sky, your hands stretched up to the heavens, right? To the Shamayim. And you need to have your eyes open, possibly. You don't know what kind of blessing he might show you, right? They tell you how to pray all wrong. All right, so, which was stretched out, the stretching out of the hands and eyes toward heaven, as other passages of the Old Testament and New Testament inform us. By the way, this posture seemed to have continued in the Christian church until the clergy, instead of learning their prayers by heart, read them out of a book, which is by a great measure inconsistent with such an elevated posture, and which seems to me to have been only a later practice introduced under the corrupt state of the church. Though the constant use of divine forms of prayer, praise, and thanksgiving appears to me to have been the practice of the Most High's people, patriarchs, Yahudim, and Christians in all parts of the past ages. But when they're saying Christians, they're saying, believers. So let's just substitute that word. The Yahudim and the believers of the truth. All right, we'll use that. I'm not using the word Christians. All right, that's the end of that point, and that's the end of chapter 2. So we're about to go ahead and jump into chapter 3. And there's only one point there, and there's only one section. It's chapter 3, that Moshe kindly received his father-in-law Jethro when he came to him to Mount Sinai. All right, so let's get chapter 3, section 1. Let's continue. Section 1 reads, now when Reuel, Jethro, Moshe's father-in-law, understood in what a prosperous condition his affairs were, he willingly came to meet him. And Moshe took Zipporah his wife and his children, and pleased himself with his coming. And when he had offered sacrifice, he made a feast for the multitude near the bush he had formerly seen, which multitude everyone according to their families partook of the feast. But Aharon and his family took Reuel, or Jethro, and sang hymns to the Most High Yahweh, as to him who had been the author procurer of the deliverance and their freedom. They also praised their leader as him by whose virtue it was that all things had succeeded with them. Reuel also, in his Eucharistical oration to Moshe, made great praises to the whole multitude, and he could not but admire Moshe for his fortitude, and that humanity he had shown in the delivery of his friends. That's the end of chapter 3. All right, cool. All right, Mishpachah. All right, Mishpachah, family and friends. That's the end of this one right here, right? We got chapter 2 and chapter 3 in. The next read, we're going to jump into chapter 4, how Reuel suggested to Moshe to set his people in order under the rulers of thousands and rulers of hundreds who lived without order before, and how Moshe complied in all things with his father-in-law's advice, right? And we're about to start hearing about these 613 laws pretty soon, all right? So all praises to the Most High. Thank you for being here. Oh, yeah. All right, that's cool. And as we try to be consistent, and stay positive over here on the road trip, Mishpachah, Kingdom Builders, Road Trippers, we want to pray and ask the Most High to continue to bless the ministries of our brothers and sisters, our Akim and Akatim out there, right? Who are really just carrying the load, carrying the torch, right? Really just doing some great things in their office, right? And you're doing great things in your office just by watching these videos and supporting your other brothers out here. You are doing more than you can even understand, You are exhorting them, which is more confirmation in their minds that they're doing the right thing for the Most High, which is absolutely correct, because the Spirit, the Ruach, is growing in us all. We're coming closer and closer together. If you can't feel it, right, you need to check your pulse, all right? You need to check your pulse. So what's happening right now is very real. What's happening right now is all prophecy. It's very foretold. Right? And we're all just very blessed and excited to be here, to have this amazing of a blessing, to be chosen to live in the final generation. Like, how amazing is that? Right? You could have had your last regeneration 50, 100 years ago in the time of slavery. You were chosen that you missed all that, and you just get to see the good parts. But you had to feel a little bit of the bad. You got to feel some bad to know the good, right? But your spirit is crying out. Your spirit is literally bleeding for the Most High. Just because you're not injured or damaged physically, or maybe nobody's disrespected you today, we are one nation, one love. So we understand that one of us out there, some of us out there, many of us out there are experiencing they had a bad day today, right? Probably for no reason also. We're all one people. We got to come back together. But anyway, I'm not going to keep going with that. Kingdom builders, road trippers, shalom, shalom, peace and blessing, all praises, honor, and glory to the Most High, Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Right? Honors to the Ruach, my love and my respect to you. Please be safe out there. We are the road trip. So we're talking about you driving. Please be safe as you travel to and fro to your prospective places. Right? Especially if you're driving those kiddies around. All right? And you know the program over here. It's always all praises to the Most High. I'll see you all very soon on the next one, Yahweh willing. All right. I love you. Yeah. All right.